There were 3 toothbrushes in the holder on the bathroom counter. There should have been 2. Mine is green, and it was in the left slot where I always put it. Derek's is blue, and it was in the right slot where he always puts it. And between them, in the middle slot that has been empty for the entire 4 years we have lived in this house, was a toothbrush that was neither green nor blue but purple, with a clear handle and soft bristles, and the particular look of a toothbrush that has been used more than once but fewer than 10 times, not new but not established. The toothbrush of someone who has started keeping one here but has not been keeping one here for long. I noticed it on a Sunday evening in January when I came home from a 5-day business trip to Boston. I had dropped my bag in the hallway and kissed Derek and asked how his week had been, and he had said quiet, boring without you, the usual. And I had gone upstairs to shower and unpack, and I had walked into the bathroom and turned on the light and looked at the counter the way you look at a counter. You have looked at every day for 4 years without really seeing it, except that this time I saw it because there was something on it that should not have been there. I picked up the purple toothbrush, I held it between my fingers, and I looked at it and I put it back. I showered, I unpacked. I went downstairs, and I ate the dinner Derek had made, which was grilled chicken and roasted vegetables and rice, which is what Derek makes when he is trying to be thoughtful, because he knows I like to eat something healthy after traveling. I ate dinner, and I talked to him about my trip, and he talked to me about his week, and at no point during the conversation did I mention the toothbrush because I wanted to see if he would mention it first, and he did not. My name is Adrian, and I am 36 years old, and I have been married to Derek for 6 years, and we live in a townhouse in a neighborhood called Federal Hill in Baltimore, Maryland. Derek is a graphic designer who works from home 3 days a week and goes into his company's office in Canton 2 days a week. I am a pharmaceutical sales representative, and my job requires me to travel approximately 1 week out of every month, sometimes more, to meet with doctors and hospital administrators and pharmacy managers in cities along the East Coast. My territory covers Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C., and I have been traveling this route for 4 years. And in those 4 years, Derek has been home alone in our townhouse for approximately 12 weeks per year, and I had never once had a reason to think about what happened in our home during those 12 weeks because I trusted Derek completely. And because trust, when it is complete, does not generate questions, the toothbrush generated a question. I did not ask the question immediately. Instead, I did something that I think most people would find unusual, but that made sense to me in the particular way that unusual things make sense to people whose instincts are telling them something that their conscious minds have not caught up to yet. I started paying attention to the house, not to Derek, but to the house itself, to the objects in it, to the small physical details that constitute the daily archaeology of a shared domestic space, the things that are always in the same place and the things that are not. I found the second anomaly on Tuesday morning. I had been looking for my favorite coffee mug, a ceramic mug with a blue glaze that I bought at a craft fair in Fells Point 3 years ago, and that I keep on the second shelf of the kitchen cabinet because I am particular about where things go in my kitchen, and everything has a place, and the place does not change. The mug was not on the second shelf. It was on the third shelf, pushed to the back, behind a row of glasses that are rarely used. Derek does not use my blue mug. Derek has his own mug, a large black one with the logo of a design conference he attended in 2022. There is no reason for my blue mug to be on the third shelf, unless someone who does not know where it belongs put it back in the wrong place after using it. The third anomaly appeared on Wednesday. I was making the bed, which I do every morning with a precision that Derek finds amusing, and that I find necessary because a made bed is the foundation of an organized day. I pulled back the duvet to straighten the fitted sheet, and I found a long, dark hair on Derek's pillow. Not my hair. My hair is short and blonde, cut in a bob that sits above my shoulders. This hair was long, at least 12 inches, and dark brown, nearly black, and it was lying across Derek's pillow in the particular sinuous curve that long hair makes when it falls from someone's head onto a surface they have been lying on. I picked up the hair. I held it between my fingers. I looked at it in the morning light coming through the bedroom window, and I thought about all the possible explanations for a 12-inch dark hair on my husband's pillow in a house where no one with long dark hair lives or visits with any regularity. Derek's mother has short gray hair. My friends who visit occasionally are blonde or brunette with shoulder-length hair at most. The cleaning service we use sends the same woman every 2 weeks, and she wears her hair in a tight bun under a cap. There was no explanation for this hair that did not involve someone with long dark hair lying on my husband's pillow in my absence, And the absence I was thinking about was not a brief visit for a cup of tea. I did not say anything to Derek. I put the hair in a small plastic bag that I took from the kitchen drawer where we keep sandwich bags, and I put the bag in the inner pocket of my purse, and I went to work. That evening I came home and I walked through the house with new eyes, the eyes of a person who is no longer looking at her home as a familiar space but as a crime scene. And I started finding things. The shower. Our shower has a built-in shelf that holds shampoo and conditioner and body wash. My products are on the left side of the shelf. Derek's products are on the right side. There was a bottle of conditioner on the shelf that belonged to neither of us, a small travel-size bottle of a brand called Olaplex that I do not use and that Derek has no reason to use because Derek has the kind of short practical hair that requires shampoo and nothing else. The bottle was approximately 1/3 full, and it was pushed toward the back of the shelf, as though someone had placed it there with the intention of it not being noticed. The closet. Our bedroom closet is a walk-in with my clothes on the left and Derek's clothes on the right, and a shelf above for storage. I went through my side of the closet item by item, and everything was where I had left it. Then I went through the shelf above and I found, pushed behind a stack of folded blankets that we keep for guests, a silk sleep mask in a shade of rose gold that I have never owned, and that was not mine. The sleep mask was the kind of thing a woman keeps by her bed when she sleeps somewhere regularly enough to leave accessories. And it was hidden in a place where someone who was trying to conceal it might put it. Not in the open, but not deeply buried either. The hiding place of someone who was in a hurry. I kept searching. In the guest bathroom downstairs, I found a bar of soap that was not the brand we use. A small artisanal bar with lavender scent that had been used once and left in the soap dish. In the kitchen, I found a wine glass in the drying rack that had a faint lipstick mark on the rim in a shade of dark berry that I do not wear. In the living room, I found an indentation in the couch cushion on the side where I normally sit, the kind of indentation that comes from someone sitting in the same spot repeatedly over a period of time, and I do not sit on that couch when I am traveling, because I am not home when I am traveling. Each object told a piece of a story. The toothbrush said she brushes her teeth here. The hair said she sleeps here. The conditioner said she showers here. The sleep mask said she stays the night. The mug on the wrong shelf said she drinks from my cups. The wine glass said she drinks my wine. The couch indentation said she sits where I sit. The soap said she washes her hands in my guest bathroom. Each object individually could be explained away. Each object collectively could not. Someone had been living in my house while I was in Boston and New York and Philadelphia and Washington, D.C., visiting doctors and pharmacy managers, and carrying a briefcase full of product samples, and sleeping in hotel rooms, and calling Derek every evening and saying, "I miss you," and having him say, "I miss you too," and believing both of those statements were true, when apparently the only one that was true was mine. I spent the rest of that week documenting everything I had found. I photographed each object in place before moving it. I noted the locations and the dates. I checked the house each day for new anomalies, and I found them: a bobby pin behind the bathroom mirror, a different brand of hand lotion in the bedside table drawer on what I now understood was not Derek's side of the bed but their side of the bed, a receipt from a Thai restaurant in Hampton that was crumpled in the kitchen trash can dated to a Tuesday evening 2 weeks ago when I was in Philadelphia, and Derek had told me he was eating leftover pizza. The receipt was the most useful piece of evidence because it contained a time and a date and a table number, and an order for 2 entrees and 2 glasses of wine and a dessert to share. The particular order of 2 people having dinner together at a restaurant that is romantic enough to share a dessert and casual enough to pay with cash, and forget the receipt in the trash. Derek had paid cash, which is notable because Derek almost never pays cash. He uses his debit card for everything because he likes having a digital record of his spending, which means he had specifically chosen to pay cash for this dinner to avoid it appearing on the bank statement that I have access to. I did not confront Derek that week. I traveled to New York the following Monday for a 3-day trip, and while I was gone, I did something that I had been considering since the moment I found the toothbrush. I installed a small camera. Not a spy camera or anything illegal, a basic home security camera, the kind you can buy at any electronics store, and that connects to an app on your phone. The kind that people use to watch their pets or check on their homes when they are away. I installed it on a shelf in the living room facing the front door, positioned behind a stack of books where it would not be noticed, and I connected it to my phone and I left for New York. The first evening I was away, I opened the app at 7:30. The camera showed the living room of my townhouse. Derek was on the couch watching television. He was alone. At 8:15, the front door opened and a woman walked in. She was carrying a bag, and she was wearing a coat, and she hung the coat on the hook by the door where I hang my coat, and she put the bag down on the bench where I put my bag, and she walked to the couch and she leaned down and kissed Derek on the mouth, and he put his hand on the back of her neck, the way he puts his hand on the back of my neck when I lean down to kiss him, and she sat down beside him on the couch on my side, and he put his arm around her, and they watched television together. The woman had long dark hair. I watched from a hotel room in New York as a woman I had never seen sat on my couch in my spot with my husband's arm around her in my house, wearing a coat that hung on my hook and carrying a bag that rested on my bench, and I watched for 45 minutes as they watched television together, and then Derek turned off the television and they stood up and walked toward the stairs and disappeared from the camera's frame. And I knew where they were going because there is only one place you go when you walk up the stairs in my townhouse, and it is my bedroom. I closed the app, I put my phone face down on the hotel room nightstand. I went to the window and I looked out at the New York skyline and I stood there for a long time processing what I had seen, not just the affair which I had suspected since the toothbrush, but the domesticity of it, the ordinariness of it, the way this woman moved through my home with the casual familiarity of someone who belonged there, hanging her coat on my hook, sitting in my spot, kissing my husband with the easy performative warmth of someone who has done it many times before. This was not a woman visiting my house. This was a woman living in my house. This was a woman who had a toothbrush in my bathroom and conditioner in my shower and a sleep mask in my closet and a spot on my couch and a side of my bed, and she occupied all of these spaces with the comfort of someone who considered them hers. I opened the app again the next morning at 6:45. The camera showed the living room. At 6:52, the woman came down the stairs wearing Derek's t-shirt and a pair of shorts that might have been hers or might have been mine. And she went to the kitchen, and I could hear sounds through the camera's microphone, the sound of the coffee maker running, the sound of cabinets opening and closing, the sound of a mug being placed on the counter, and I thought about my blue mug on the wrong shelf, and I understood exactly who had moved it and why it was on the third shelf instead of the second. Because this woman did not know which shelf it belonged on, because this woman was not me. Derek came downstairs at 7:15, and the woman handed him a cup of coffee, and he thanked her, and they stood in the kitchen together and talked, and I watched them through a camera on a shelf behind a stack of books in my own living room, from a hotel room 200 miles away, and I thought about the particular specific violation of someone else making coffee in your kitchen, and standing at your counter, and using your mugs and existing in your domestic space, with the particular ownership that comes from being there often enough to know where the coffee filters are kept. They left the house separately. Derek left first at 8:30, dressed for the office, his bag over his shoulder, walking out the front door the way he walks out the front door every day. The woman left 20 minutes later, dressed in clothes she appeared to have brought in the bag she had carried the previous evening, her long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, closing the door behind her with the ease of someone who has a key. She had a key. The woman who had been sleeping in my bed and showering in my shower and brushing her teeth with a purple toothbrush in my bathroom had a key to my home. Derek had given her a key. He had given another woman the ability to enter and leave my house at will, to come and go as she pleased, to occupy my domestic space whenever I was not in it. And I understood in that moment that this was not just an affair, this was a replacement. I was being replaced in my own home by a woman who entered through my front door with a key my husband had given her. I watched the camera feed for the remaining 2 days of my trip. The woman came back the second evening, at approximately the same time, 8:20, carrying the same bag, hanging her coat on the same hook, sitting in the same spot, following the same routine. The domesticity of it was what destroyed me most. Not the betrayal itself, but the ordinariness of the betrayal. The way it had been folded into the daily rhythms of a household that I had built and maintained. And that was now functioning as someone else's home during the weeks when I was away earning the money that paid the mortgage on it. She left the next morning at 9:10 after making coffee and standing at my counter and drinking from a mug that I could not identify from the camera angle, but that I was certain was mine. On the third morning, I packed my suitcase in the hotel room in New York, and I sat on the edge of the bed, and I thought about what I was going to do when I got home. I had been thinking about this continuously for 3 days, and the options had narrowed from many to few to one. I was not going to have a conversation with Derek about what I had seen. I was not going to present evidence and demand explanations. I was not going to give him the opportunity to construct a narrative that softened what he had done, or that reframed it as something other than what it was. I was going to do something different, something that the domestic archaeologist in me demanded, something that would make the violation of my space as visible to everyone as it had been visible to me when I found a purple toothbrush in the middle slot of a holder that had only ever held two. I called an attorney from the train on the way home. Her name was Mona Haddad, and she practiced family law in Baltimore, and I chose her because her website said she specialized in cases involving breach of marital trust and domestic financial misconduct, and because her photograph showed a woman who looked like she did not tolerate nonsense. I told Mona what I had found and what I had recorded, and she asked whether the camera was legal, and I said yes, it is my home. I installed a security camera in my own living room. There is nothing illegal about that, and she said correct. Maryland is a one-party consent state for video in your own home without audio interception expectations. And she said the footage showing the woman entering and exiting with a key and engaging in domestic activity with your husband is strong evidence of an ongoing relationship being conducted in the marital home. Mona told me that in Maryland adultery is a ground for absolute divorce and that evidence of the affair being conducted in the marital home could be a significant factor in the property settlement. She told me that the fact that Derek had given this woman a key to the marital home and had allowed her to occupy it during my absences was particularly relevant because it demonstrated a level of entrenchment that went beyond a casual affair. She told me to continue documenting, but not to confront Derek until we had filed because once Derek knew I was aware, he might change the locks or alert the woman or take steps to conceal evidence. I went home that afternoon. I walked through the front door, and I looked at the coat hook where the woman's coat had hung, and at the bench where her bag had rested, and at the couch where she had sat in my spot, and at the stairs she had climbed to my bedroom, and I felt a particular rage that I had not felt before, not the hot, dramatic rage of betrayal, but the cold, precise rage of territorial violation, the rage of an animal who has returned to her den and found another animal's scent on everything she owns. Derek was in his office working. He came out when he heard me, and he said, "Hey, you are home early." And I said, "My last meeting was canceled." And he said, "Nice, how was the trip?" And I said, "Productive." And he said, "Do you want to go out for dinner tonight?" And I said, "Sure." We went out for dinner. We went to a restaurant in Fells Point, and we sat across from each other, and I ordered the salmon, and he ordered the steak, and we talked about my trip and his week, and a project he was working on for a client, and a movie he wanted to see that weekend. And I participated in the conversation with a fluency that surprised me, because underneath the conversation my mind was conducting a completely separate operation, cataloging every lie embedded in every sentence he spoke, counting the omissions, measuring the distance between the man sitting across from me, performing the role of devoted husband, and the man I had watched on camera, putting his arm around another woman on my couch 2 nights ago. I traveled the following week to Philadelphia. 2 days. Before I left, I repositioned the camera slightly to capture a wider angle that included the hallway and the base of the stairs. I also did something new. I placed 3 items in specific locations throughout the house, and I photographed their positions. I placed a magazine on the coffee table at an exact angle with the corner touching a specific point on the table's edge. I placed a decorative pillow on the couch in a specific orientation with the zipper facing the wall. I placed a hand towel in the guest bathroom folded in a specific way with the embroidered edge facing left. These were my markers. If anyone moved through the house with the casual familiarity that the woman on the camera had demonstrated, these items would be disturbed, and the disturbance would confirm what the camera was already showing me. When I came home from Philadelphia, every marker had been moved. The magazine was at a different angle. The pillow zipper was facing the ceiling. The hand towel had been refolded with the embroidered edge facing right. The camera footage confirmed what the markers showed. The woman had been there both nights, arriving and departing at approximately the same times, following the same routine, occupying the same spaces. I spent 3 weeks gathering footage, 3 trips, 9 days away, 9 evenings of watching the woman enter my home and occupy my life as though it were her own. By the end of the 3 weeks, I had approximately 18 hours of footage showing the woman in my living room and kitchen, entering and exiting with a key, interacting with Derek, moving through the spaces of my home with increasing comfort and familiarity. I had photographs of every domestic object she had introduced into the house, the toothbrush, the conditioner, the sleep mask, the soap. I had photographs of every marker I had placed and how it had been moved. I had a receipt from the Thai restaurant. I had a strand of dark hair in a plastic bag. I had a case. Mona filed the divorce papers on a Tuesday. Derek was not served at an office or a restaurant or a public place. He was served at home in the house on a Thursday evening at 6 o'clock when he opened the front door expecting to see the delivery driver he had ordered food from, and instead found a process server holding an envelope. I was home. I was upstairs in the bedroom. I heard the doorbell. I heard Derek open the door. I heard the process server say, "Mr. Ashford, you have been served." I heard the door close. I heard Derek standing in the hallway opening the envelope. I came downstairs. Derek was standing in the hallway with the divorce papers in his hand, and the look on his face was not the look of a man who has been caught, but the look of a man who has been interrupted. The distinction between those two expressions is subtle but important, because a man who has been caught knows what has been found, and a man who has been interrupted does not yet know what the interruption contains. I stood at the top of the stairs, and I looked down at him, and I said, "Derek, before you read those papers, I want to show you something." And I walked past him to the living room, and I picked up my laptop from the desk, and I opened it, and I pressed play on a file I had saved, and the screen showed the security camera footage from the first night I had recorded, the footage of the woman walking through the front door at 8:15, hanging her coat on my hook, putting her bag on my bench, walking to the couch, leaning down, kissing Derek, sitting in my spot, his arm going around her. Derek watched the footage. His face went through a sequence of expressions that I observed with the detached, analytical attention of a woman who had spent 3 weeks studying the physical evidence of her husband's affair, and who was now studying the emotional evidence on his face. First confusion, then recognition, then the rapid calculation of how much I knew and how long I had known it, then something that I think was meant to be remorse but that arrived too late and in the wrong proportion to be convincing. He said Adrian, and I said her name. What is her name? He said it does not matter, and I said it matters to me because she has been sleeping in my bed and using my shower and drinking from my mugs and sitting on my couch, and I want to know the name of the woman who has been living my life while I was away. He said her name is Naomi. I said how long, and he said 7 months. I said she has a key to my house, and he said yes. I said you gave another woman a key to the house where I live, to the house I pay the mortgage on, to the house where my clothes are in the closet, and my products are in the shower, and my coffee mug is on the second shelf of the kitchen cabinet. Except it is not on the second shelf anymore because Naomi does not know where it goes, and she put it on the third shelf, and that is how I found out about her, Derek. She put my mug on the wrong shelf. Derek put the divorce papers down on the hallway bench, and he said, "I am sorry," and I said, "That is not a useful statement right now. What would be useful is for you to tell me whether Naomi knows I exist." He said, "She knows about you." I said, "What does she know?" He said, "She knows you travel for work, and she knows we have been having difficulties." And I said, "We have not been having difficulties, Derek. We have been having a marriage. The only difficulty has been that you have been conducting a parallel relationship inside my home, while I was away earning the income that pays for it." He said, "I never meant for it to go this far," and I said, "You gave her a key. That is not a thing that happens by accident. A key is a deliberate act. A key is an invitation. A key says you belong here, and you can come and go as you please. And the person who actually belongs here will not know because she is in a hotel room in Boston, looking at sales reports and calling you every evening and believing you when you say the house is quiet." I told Derek that I wanted 3 things. I wanted him out of the house by the weekend. I wanted the locks changed. And I wanted Naomi's key returned before she used it one more time. He said, "Where am I supposed to go?" And I said, "That is not my problem. You have been maintaining a parallel domestic arrangement for 7 months, so I imagine you have options. Perhaps Naomi has room for you at her place, wherever that is, and I imagine the transition will be seamless since she is already familiar with your evening routine." Derek moved out on Saturday. He packed his things into boxes and loaded them into his car and drove away, and I stood in the doorway and I watched him go, and then I went inside and I changed the locks. The locksmith arrived within an hour and replaced both the front door and the back door locks, and gave me 3 new keys, and I held them in my hand and I thought about how small a key is and how much power it contains, the power to enter and the power to exclude, and for 7 months Derek had given that power to someone who was not his wife, and now I was taking it back. I walked through the house after the locks were changed. I went room by room. I removed the purple toothbrush and threw it away. I removed the Olaplex conditioner and threw it away. I removed the sleep mask and threw it away. I removed the artisanal lavender soap and threw it away. I stripped the bed and put on clean sheets. I washed every mug in the kitchen cabinet and put them back in their correct positions, my blue mug on the second shelf where it belongs. I vacuumed the couch and flipped the cushions. I opened every window in the house and let the January air come through, cold and sharp and clean. And I stood in my living room with the wind moving through, and I reclaimed every square foot of my home by removing every trace of the woman who had occupied it. Mona handled the divorce with the efficiency she had promised. The footage from the security camera was entered as evidence. The documentation of domestic objects was entered as evidence. The markers and their displacement were entered as evidence. Derek's attorney attempted to argue that the security camera footage constituted a violation of the woman's privacy. And Mona countered that the camera was installed in the petitioner's own home, and that any person who entered that home did so with the implicit understanding that the homeowner had the right to monitor her own property. The judge agreed with Mona. The divorce was finalized in 5 months. I kept the townhouse. Derek was ordered to pay his share of the mortgage until the property settlement was complete. The settlement itself was favorable to me. Mona had argued successfully that Derek's use of the marital home to conduct an affair and his invitation of another woman to occupy the shared domestic space constituted a form of marital misconduct that should be reflected in the division of assets. The judge agreed with that too. Naomi contacted me once. She sent me a letter, not an email or a text, but a handwritten letter on stationery that suggested she was the kind of person who still writes letters by hand, which under different circumstances I might have found admirable. The letter said she was sorry. She said she had known I existed, but that Derek had told her our marriage was functionally over, and that I was rarely home, and that the house felt empty without someone in it, and that she had believed him because she wanted to believe him. She said she understood now that what she had participated in was a violation of my space and my trust, and that she felt ashamed of the way she had moved through my home as though it were hers. I read the letter once. I put it in a drawer. I did not respond because there was nothing to say to a woman who had slept in my bed and used my shower and moved my coffee mug to the wrong shelf, and who was now asking for my understanding. Understanding is something I have in abundance for people who have been deceived. Naomi was not deceived. Naomi knew I existed. She knew I traveled for work. She knew the house she was entering belonged to someone else. She chose to enter it anyway because Derek told her a version of our marriage that made her entry feel permissible, and she accepted that version without questioning it, because questioning it would have required her to give up the comfortable domestic arrangement she had found. I still live in the townhouse. I changed the decor. I painted the bedroom a color I chose without consulting anyone. I rearranged the kitchen cabinets so that my blue mug is now on the first shelf, front and center, the first thing I see when I open the cabinet every morning. I bought new couch cushions. I threw away the coat hook and replaced it with a different one. I made the house mine in ways that it had never fully been mine before, because when you share a space with someone, you make compromises about how that space looks and feels and functions, and when you stop sharing it, you get to stop compromising. Derek and I do not communicate. There are no children to co-parent. There is no shared custody to arrange. There is only the clean severance of two people whose lives were joined and are now separate, and whose separation was triggered by a purple toothbrush in the middle slot of a holder that should have held two. If you are listening to this and you travel for work, and you come home and something feels different, if the mug is on the wrong shelf, or the pillow is facing the wrong direction, or there is a hair on the pillow that does not belong to anyone who lives in your house, I want you to know that the feeling you have is not paranoia. It is pattern recognition. It is your brain detecting an anomaly in a system you know intimately and alerting you to the fact that the system has been interfered with. Trust that feeling. Document what you find. Photograph the objects, note the positions, place your own markers and check them when you return. Your home is the most honest witness in your life because your home does not know how to rearrange itself, and it does not know how to hide evidence, and it does not know how to put a mug back on the right shelf if the person putting it back has never been told which shelf is right. The toothbrush was the beginning, the mug was the confirmation, the camera was the proof, and the locks were the ending. 3 new keys in my hand and a house that is finally, completely, entirely mine. Leave me a comment and tell me what you would have noticed first. The toothbrush, the hair, the mug on the wrong shelf. Tell me whether you check your home for signs of disturbance when you come back from traveling, or whether you trust that the space you left is the space you return to. Tell me whether you think Naomi deserved a response to her letter, or whether my silence was the only appropriate answer. And tell me whether changing the locks felt like enough, or whether you would have needed something more dramatic to feel like the house was yours again. If you are new here, subscribe and turn on notifications because there are more stories coming, and every one of them begins with a woman noticing something small that turned out to be the thread that, when pulled, unraveled everything she thought she knew about the life she was living. I will see you in the next one.